Now, the two premature babies who were stolen from the Dora Nginza hospital in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape have been found. According to the Provincial Health Department, the 2- and 4-day-old babies were abducted on Tuesday night. To tell us more about this, we are joined now by SABC News reporter Lerato Fekisi. Lerato, good morning, and quite a distressing story. One can only imagine the trauma that the mothers faced in this regard. But how exactly did this happen?
Well, a very good morning to you, Sakina. Well, on Tuesday night, as we were told by the family members of the victims whose babies were abducted and then eventually returned to the hospital, that on Tuesday night at about 7 p.m, Sakina, a lady who had for some time been turned away from the hospital walked into the hospital with another lady who had a child inside the hospital. She gave birth a week ago and she left her baby inside. So she came back under the pretense that she's coming to fetch her child with another lady who is now one of the accused, and they walked inside the hospital wearing gowns and carrying a bag. The security obviously was quite alarmed and wasn't too sure as to why this lady was here, even went inside the maternity ward and asked the other ladies who were breastfeeding their children if they knew who the second lady was, and most of the women inside the ward explained they didn't know who she was and what she was doing inside there. The second accused then proceeded to tell the women who were inside the maternity ward to stop breastfeeding their children because their children were perhaps full at this time, and asked them to leave. And it was at this time, Sakina, that the accused then went inside the maternity ward, took two babies, one 2 days old, another one 4 days old, who I must state also were prematures and still inside an incubator, put them inside a bag, and like I said, she was still wearing her gown, and then walked out the hospital through another exit. And when asked by the police and also the Department of Health as to how the security guard allowed her to walk out, even speaking to the family, he exclaimed that he thought that what was in the bag or what was making a sound in the bag were actually cats, and that's why he interpreted as that and didn't ever consider that perhaps the two babies were inside there. Then the moms were informed that their babies had went missing, and the family were called to the hospital, and then the search began. And then later, yesterday afternoon, after huge social media uproar, identification of the lady through CCTV footage, she was discovered by her neighbor with the babies inside her house. The neighbor then obviously in her distress told her to return the babies back to Dora Nginza, to their mothers. They were returned safely yesterday just after 3 o'clock. They were put back into incubators and they are recovering. The two parents are also currently receiving counseling, and we're expecting the MEC of Health later on this afternoon, Sakina, to come address the family members. Another huge concern, Sakina, which I think the family is going to address, besides the evident negligence at the hospital, the evidence lack of security at the hospital, specifically the maternity ward, is the issue of the 4-day-old Sakina, who the family told us yesterday that they initially went to the hospital actually to find out how the 4-day-old was actually born, or they were told by the nurses that his arm had been broken during a delivery, which they found rather peculiar because the mother had a C-section and didn't understand how a child who was delivered broke an arm. And they also want to raise such concerns with the MEC of what they are really saying is a broken down maternity ward in Dora Nginza, where nurses and staff are negligent. And also coming out, Sakina, which was quite alarming, was one of the family members who told us yesterday that as they tried to raise issues of negligence to the nurses, the matron who is in charge of the maternity ward told the family that, you know what, just sit down and relax. This is not the first time this happens. You guys are not the first to have a child abducted from the hospital. So there is a huge problem at Dora Nginza, particularly the maternity ward, where we have heard also through social media posts, comments from our social media feeds of people saying, I lost my child at Dora Nginza, I still haven't recovered them. I lost my child, it was returned. So there is an evident problem. There is an evident problem of lack of security, definitely negligence, and also in terms of health, the health sector and the health standards of the hospital, particularly the maternity ward, in huge question today.
Just a final question, Lerato. You did say that the babies were removed from incubators. Now, given that they were out of those incubators for an extended period of time, has there been any update on the health of the babies and how this would have affected them?
Yes, we were told that as soon as the babies were returned, they were actually taken to a specific specialized zone for babies that are prematures. They were given specialized attention by specialists at Dora Nginza Hospital, and we have heard that we're actually able to get a feed from their mothers when they return to hospital, and we have heard that they are in good condition, obviously still under high supervision from specialists at Dora Nginza. But both the moms and the children, the moms obviously traumatized, receiving counseling, but the babies also are very much doing well, recovering well. And I think what was a highlight for the moms, that the babies were able to get their feed, are still responding in terms of breastfeeding and taking the milk from their parents, which is a good sign that they're still eating and will be under high supervision and high medical care from the staff at Dora Nginza.
Thank you so much, Lerato Fekisi, for that update, and she'll be watching that story for us.